I don't think there's any worse feeling in the world than being absolutely alone with nobody behind you.
But we all know the experience when people are in our corner, when we're feeling like we're together in something. I can imagine for those that have made the decision to move across the world, to uproot their families and to go and serve in a place that God is directing them to, that can be a pretty intense experience.
Well, you don't even have to move halfway around the world to feel that. I mean, even right here, if you are in one of the local missions here in the city, there's moments of feeling very alone. And we don't want anybody that's a Riverwood missionary to feel that. We want them to feel like there's 1,500 people right behind them, cheering them on, praying for them, and supporting them.
And one of the great ways we get to do this as a church is to invest into their experience, to be a tangible support financially to them. We've taken great joy in being a part of that journey over decades.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this Give Global campaign. It's an opportunity for us to raise the funds to support all our missionaries, which has grown to like $60,000 a year. Plus, we have a couple of special projects, Churchill VBS, solar power system in the Philippines, a total of $70,000, and we're making progress. About 45 people have given so far. We're moving that needle up over pretty close to the $16,000 range, but we got a ways to go.
And we really feel like if everybody plays a part in this, that we can make this happen, that as a church we can rally around all of these needs and show our support in a very tangible way to those that are both here in Winnipeg but across the world.
So one of the things we want to do is feature and introduce you to our missionaries. We've got 18 of them, and here's just a few more.
Hey Riverwood, my name is Ryan Rempel. I'm the director for Give the Word Ministries here in Winnipeg. Thank you so much for supporting us over the last number of years. One of the things that we're doing this year is restocking our warehouse. We're looking at purchasing another 50,000 Bibles this year, which is a huge undertaking for us. But like one of the new believers said who had gotten one of our Bibles, he said, this is the only thing that has changed my life, is the gospel. And how did it take so long for me to be exposed to that? And so we just want to get the Word of God into people's hands, and it's through churches and ministries like Riverwood who are helping us do that. So thank you, and we love you. Your support means the world.
Hi, I'm John Courtney with Youth for Christ. Now let's get one thing straight. When I retired from eldership, I did not retire from work. I still lead YFC full-time. At YFC, we work with over 7,000 teenagers annually and run programs year-round. Summer is our most intense season of ministry. Pray that hundreds of teenagers will respond to the opportunity to follow Jesus. Pray for me as I give oversight and leadership to Youth for Christ. I appreciate my church family and the support and encouragement you are to me. Thank you.
Well, we're so proud of the work that's being done, of these 18 missionaries that are both here in Winnipeg and around the world, just serving in such an incredible way. And we really believe that all it takes is for each one of us to play a small part, to come and ask God, what should I do? Right now, 45 people have come forward to say, let's play a part, but there's so many more. And so we want to ask you today to consider, how can you play a part?
Yeah, our vision is that 12 to 1,500 people would be standing behind every one of our missionaries. So take that card that's on your seat, put it on your fridge, and allow it to remind you to pray for these folks, and then just kind of make a decision on what day and what time you're going to figure out that gift and be part of this, so we can line up 12 to 1,500 people behind each of these missionaries.
So we'd invite you to even visit our website and the Give Global page, and you can track along on the progress. You can even make a donation right there and learn a bit more about each of our missionaries. But consider playing a part. We want to take care of this need by the end of June. If everybody plays a part, we can make this happen as a church, and we can stand behind those that we're supporting as missionaries.
So we unapologetically invite and challenge and ask every Riverwooder to be in the game all the time. We say, everybody serve, everybody give. Everybody give, everybody serve. Let's all do this together. And as we all do this together, we can accomplish miracles. And so we really believe that this goal is absolutely easily attainable if everybody does something. And so we're encouraging you by the end of June to join us in this. Already 45 have led the way, but we've got a ways to go, and we would love for you to join us as well. So everybody at the warehouse and over at the fire hall, our friends up in Churchill and here at the factory, we're going to get into into our 7th week of teaching on the book of Revelation with a game. And it's a game I absolutely love because I made it up. And so we're going to play my game, and it might be a corny dad game, but that's okay. I can get away with it on a day like today. So you need a partner. So find a partner next to you, shake hands, introduce yourself to your partner. You need to be able to have somebody you can talk to here at the warehouse, fire hall, everywhere. Okay, you got your partner. Here's what the game is called. Let's call it, what is this, okay? That's a good name for a game. What is this? So I'm going to show you a picture, and you're going to tell the person next to you and show them how smart you are by telling them before they tell you what it is, okay? You got it? So it's really easy game. You need to be out loud, needs to be loud and noisy in here. If you were part of an earlier service, it's cheating to say what it is because you already know, okay? So don't do that. And your mark, here we go. And what's the first picture? Here we go. What is it? Tell the person next to you. Show how smart you are by telling them what it is. Okay, you're not going to have much time. Picture number 2, what is that? Oh, that one's easy. Tell the person next to you what that is. Picture number 3, what is that? Oh, it just got quiet in here. Okay, not so easy, but you can figure it out. Time's ticking. Okay, picture number 4. Look at the side screens, picture number 4. That is so simple. Everybody knows what that is. Okay, picture number 5. There's picture number 5. Oh, again, it got a little quiet. A little quiet in here. Fire Hall Warehouse, how you doing? Churchill. Picture number 6. What is that? What is that? Picture number 7. Only 2 more. Picture number. Oh, this one is delicious. This one is so good. It tastes so good. Okay, and picture number 8. Picture number 8. That one, so easy. So easy. Okay. Good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get your score, and the way we're going to keep score is you're going to count on your fingers how many you got right, okay? So you got to be honest about it, and then at the end, I want to know how many you got right. We're going to go through them pretty quick, so you just keep score on your fingers. You ready? Okay, the first one was hair. It was a split end of hair. Someone got that right? All right, we got some people got it right. Awesome. Number 2 was an eyelash mite. That's what's crawling all over your face right now. Love that. Number 3 was a fingernail. It was not a sand dune, it was a fingernail. Okay, number 4, it was not grapes, it was a mosquito eye. That is the eye of a mosquito. Number 5 is the pore of your skin. It's one pore on your, that's what you look like up close, okay? Number 6 was the surface of a leaf. Number 7, you're keeping score, was tooth plaque, tasty tooth plaque. That's what it looks like up close. And number 8 was salt and pepper. Okay, so now we got the score. We're keeping score at all our sites. So how many of you got 4 or more? 4 or more, hands up. Wow, okay, very slim pickings. How many of you got 2 or less? 2 or less, all over the, okay. Because here's the deal. Just because we look at something in super close detail doesn't mean we know more about it or understand what it is. In fact, have you ever heard the saying, you couldn't see the forest for the trees? Right? The whole idea is that you looked in such detail and so closely at something, you couldn't get the bigger picture and you missed the deeper meaning. Well, I think when it comes to the book of Revelation, many of us have had that experience. That we've looked, and people have looked so deeply into every aspect. They put the book of Revelation and every Greek word under the microscope, and they've come out with these ideas, but they don't really know any better what it means or the deeper meaning. In fact, for 53 years of my life, I went to church for 53 years. 4 years of Bible school, 30 years of being a pastor, and all I knew of the book of Revelation was confusion and fear. Because that's what people were teaching me, was confusion and fear, because they were looking at every one of the 7 seals, and every one of the 7 trumpets, and every one of the 7 bowls, and the 2 beasts, and the harlot, and the numbers 666, and 144,000, and 7 horns, and seven crowns, and 10 horns. And they were telling me, oh, we know exactly what every one of these things is. We know in detail exactly what's going on, and yet all it produced in me was confusion and fear and a desire to have nothing to do with this book. So what you have very graciously allowed me over the last 7 weeks is to back away from the microscope and try to get a sense of the larger picture. And for that, I want to thank you, because I think we're getting a little bit of a sense of what's going on. I kind of imagine it this way. I think maybe one day God was in heaven with a couple of angels, and he nudged the angels and said, hey, watch what I'm about to do. See that guy down there on that rock, on Prison Rock? His name's John. He thinks that his life is done, that his influence on the world is done. Watch what I'm about to do. You see those 7 churches on that Roman postal route up there in Turkey? Yeah, they're having a really tough time. Many of them are doubting their faith. Many of them are beginning to follow false religions and get involved in all sorts of compromise. They think that the Roman Empire is bigger and more stronger than I. They're beginning to doubt what my son did on the cross. So you watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to rip open the heavens. I'm going to reveal the hidden to John. He's going to write it down. It's going to get past the Roman guards. It's going to go to the 7 churches. And those people are going to be so encouraged. They're going to realize once again that I am the centrifuge of the universe, that I'm still on my throne. They're going to realize that they are in a battle and they need to be battle ready. And they're going to realize that I am going to win this battle. They're going to be pumped. They're going to be encouraged. And they're going to forget about themselves and worship me for who I really am. Do you think that's really such a good idea? One of the shy angels says. I mean, after all, you do know these people creatures, what they're like. When they see something so powerful, when they hear something so powerful, they tend to worship it more than they worship you. Yeah, says the other angel. They'll probably build a shrine or build a church or maybe start tours to the 7 cities of these in Turkey, or maybe even worse. Maybe they'll start drawing charts and maps and trying to chart the whole thing out. But I took care of that, God says. You see, I'm going to make this vision so imprecise and so multi-layered, so full of shifting metaphors and such a sensory overload experience that they wouldn't dare try to chart it out. And if anybody did try to chart it out, they would very quickly realize that there's about 18 different ways you can see this thing and that it's useless trying to chart the thing out. And they're going to turn to me and they're going to worship me and see me for who I really am. Now, I don't know that conversation ever happened, but I can tell you what has happened. In the last 200 years, Christ followers have become obsessed with charting out the book of Revelation. In fact, it all started in about the early 1800s, where people began these complicated charts and saying, Jesus is returning in 1843. Oops, he didn't come. He's returning in 1844. Oops, he didn't come. And they've been doing that ever since. These calendarizers have been trying to guess when Jesus is coming. And what I want you to pay attention to on these charts particularly is something you read about in your homework this last week in Revelation chapter 20 about the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the millennium reign of Christ. I'm going to circle it on each of these charts. And this whole idea, the Revelation 20, is really the only place in the Bible that speaks of this 1,000-year reign. However, to chart makers, it has become catnip. I mean, they just love the 1,000-year reign. They love explaining when it is and how it is. In fact, for chart makers and end-time mappers, it's the one part of the chart that now allows them to draw charts to explain the chart. And so they've got subcharts to explain this part of the chart. And some of the subparts, it breaks down into basically 4 different kind of other subcharts. There's the amillennialist. So the amillennialist is somebody who believes that the millennium is figurative and symbolic. It's not a real 1,000-year reign, but it was a figurative sort of 1,000-year reign, and they draw a chart for that. And then you've got the postmillennialist, which believes that Christ is going to return after the 1,000-year reign. And then you have the historical premillennialist, which is a person that believes that Christ is going to return and then set up this 1,000-year reign. And then you have the dispensational premillennialist, who believes that there's this pre-rapture event that happens, and then a literal 7-year tribulation period, and the mark of the beast and the Antichrist, and then a 1,000-year reign of Christ, and then Satan is destroyed. So I got to thinking this last week. I thought, how am I ever going to be taken seriously as a teacher of the book of Revelation if I don't have a chart? So I thought, I need a chart. I got to come up with a chart, because that's what you do. So can I share my chart with you? Okay, here's my chart. 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ died for me. He died on the cross so that he would ransom me in a way that would pay for my sin. And I came to a place in my life where I came to a decision. I invited him into my life. And when I invited him into my life, I got off the throne of my own life. I laid down the crown of the accomplishments of my own life, and I worshiped him, and it changed everything. Now, life is hard. It's a battle. But he's with me every day, and then I'm going to die. And one day I'm going to die, and after that, he's going to meet me, and I'm going to spend eternity with him. However, I've got an option B, and that is maybe he's going to come back before I die, and then I'll spend eternity with him. However, either way, if I choose not to follow him and choose not to have him in my life, the Bible makes it very, very clear that I will spend my eternity without him. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what the conditions are, but it sounds like hell to me. Any place where Jesus and God aren't, it sounds like a very bad place. And so that's my chart. I wish you had a smarter pastor who was able to, interpret all the nuances of this thing. But then when I stand back and look at the book of Revelation, I think it's a lot simpler than we've made it. I think we've gotten so crazy microscopically parsing every Greek verb and connecting it to the headlines that I think we've made it way more complicated than it really is. You see, I don't think that this book really is all that complicated. I don't know if you remember earlier on in the series, I was telling you my most poignant moment with the book of Revelation was on a road trip with my daughter a couple of months ago, where she read the entire book of Revelation for me in one sitting in an hour and 8 minutes, somewhere between Minneapolis and Fargo. And it was a profound ripping open of the heavens for me. Because in that moment, I realized that this book isn't so much a crystal ball that's intended to tell us the doomsday future, but it's a book to encourage my soul. It's not so much a specimen to be put under the microscope, but it's a 25-foot mural to look at and to gaze at. It's not so much a text to be parsed and endlessly dissected. It's a singular, flowing bedtime story. And it's a remarkable story. And if you have never sat down to listen to it in its entirety, that's how I believe this book was intended to be experienced. And when you do, the story goes like this. One day, John was in a place where he was in discouragement on this island. And Jesus met him and gave him a vision. And Jesus took him in the vision to the throne room of heaven. And it was magnificent. And all of creation and all the redeemed were worshiping Jesus. It was a place that had not been seen by humanity since the garden. It reminded him of the garden. But when sin entered the world, everything was destroyed. Catastrophe was introduced. And so sin entering the world was almost like the corral gates for the horsemen were let open. And these horsemen tromped through the world with war and with famine and with disease and with economic struggle and with cosmic destruction and conflict and injustice of every kind. When sin entered the world, it was like trumpet blasts of chaos and violence and warfare and interpersonal struggle and families being torn apart and drug addiction. When the bowls of disaster were poured out, I mean, it looked like environmental disaster and economic systems were collapsing. It was like the whole world and all the people in it were rebelling and convulsing against God. And so in the story that God tells, he personifies evil. He personifies this rebellion against him by talking about the dragon and the beast and the harlot who cheats on God. And the mural called The Catastrophe of Sin, we read about it over these last number of weeks. It lasted from chapter 6 all the way through to chapter 18. In fact, it was almost unbearable. There was so much chaos. It was like we were pulling the covers up over our head to shield ourselves from 100-pound hailstones and stars falling from the sky and beasts flying by. I mean, it was craziness. And right when you thought, like, this is never going to end, and it had wrung every little bit of hope out of you, and you had to throw up your hands and go, it's all finished. Like, there is no hope at all. We enter into chapter 19, which was your homework this last week, 19 and 20. And suddenly it all changes. And the images change. And what we hear now, rising up out of the chaos of chapter 6 to 18, is the sweet song of salvation. That's what chapter 19 and 20 are about, the sweet song of salvation. And it comes to us in the form of a wedding and in the form of a returning war hero. What I think is that these pictures, these poignant, powerful pictures, they weren't intended for a chart. They were intended for your heart. And they were meant to inspire you, meant to help you to realize how amazing this salvation is. So let's do some hard work of Bible study together. Revelation 19:6. Then I heard again what sounded like the shout of a vast crowd, or the roar of a mighty ocean waves, or the crash of loud thunder. Praise the Lord, for the Lord our God, the Almighty, reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice, and let us give honor to him. For the time has come for the wedding feast of the Lamb, and his bride has prepared herself. She has been given the finest of pure white linen to wear, for the white linen represents the good deeds of God's holy people. I want to suggest to you that what Jesus is inspiring John to write down, to send to the 7 churches, and down the corridors of history right to us today, is really a challenge to be more actively involved in your salvation. You see, many people, they treat their salvation as a plaque on the wall. And the date on there might be 2 years ago, might be 7 years ago, might be 18 years ago, might be 27 or 41 years ago, but it's a plaque that was on the wall that was the day I gave my life to Christ. And we really don't think about it much more than maybe dusting it off every once in a while and with this idea that one day we're going to take it off the wall, and as we die and enter heaven, we're going to hand it over and it's going to be our ticket into heaven. But we really don't even think about our salvation in the in-between time. And yet I want to suggest that the revelation was given to us to activate our salvation on a daily basis. In fact, Paul says this in Philippians 2:12, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. This is something you need to be working on. It's not a plaque or a diploma you hang on your wall and then forget about and cash in one day when you die. It's something you work out every single day of your life. Our salvation in the Revelation works itself out at a marriage supper and on the battlefield. It works itself out in the revelation of these chapters at a wedding and in a war. So let's do some study of the wedding. I think in order to understand this part of the vision that's being projected on the walls of heaven, we need to understand what the culture of weddings was in Jesus' and John's time. So they were sort of like ours. There was an engagement ring, an engagement and wedding and ceremony and all that, but it was a little bit different as well. In fact, the first stage was what we call a betrothal. And this whole betrothal or betrothal was a time where they were 100% committed, but they weren't actually together. They were separate. But they had all the marriage commitments of being absolutely, the fidelity towards one another and the commitment towards one another. In fact, in the Christmas story, Mary and Joseph, it says that Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph. She was betrothed. But when Joseph realized that she was pregnant and that she might have been messing around with some other guy, he considers a divorce. And that's because in this time period, in order to break the betrothal, it wasn't like we just hand the ring back today if you're going to break off an engagement. It required a legal proceeding of divorce because you were 100% committed even though you weren't together. So what was the purpose of the betrothal? Well, it was a time of preparation. You see, the groom would leave his father's house in search of a bride. He would find a bride. He would put a ring on her finger. He would enter into this betrothal, this legal commitment, and then he would go back to the father's house to prepare a room for him and his bride. That was his preparation. It would usually take a year or two for him to prepare that. And meanwhile, the bride has got her work cut out for her. Her job is really twofold. One is to wait with anticipation and patience and excitement. But the second part was preparation. She wanted to make sure that she prepared herself. She prepared herself for the return of her groom. Finally, the groom would leave his father's house a second time, would gather an entourage, and now would return to the bride. Jesus actually loved talking about this. He loved using the wedding as a picture of our salvation. In fact, in Matthew chapter 25, he tells a story of 10 bridesmaids. And these 10 bridesmaids are getting all ready for the wedding, and they've heard that the bridegroom is coming. And so they light their lamps and they go out to meet him. However, the bridegroom is delayed. And so 5 of them conserve their oil, but 5 of them consume the oil. And then when the bridegroom finally comes, you remember the story, there's 5 that don't have any oil in their lamps. So they run off to 24-hour Walmart to get more oil. And meanwhile, the bridegroom comes, and he takes the 5 that have prepared themselves, and he takes them in. And here's the warning at the end. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside calling, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he called back, "Believe me, I don't know you. So you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or the hour of my return." His point was, much like the weddings of the time, the bridegroom could return at any time, and you don't necessarily know when he's returning, so you better be prepared. Because not everybody who thinks that they're going to get in is going to get in. You could end up getting locked out of the party, Jesus is saying, if you're not ready. mean, that's a pretty sobering warning, isn't it? Jesus told another story in Luke 14 as well as in Mark 22. And this one, he tells about a king who was throwing a wedding party. The groom had returned and they were getting all ready. They had sent the invitations out to all these important people. But when the time came for them to be invited to the actual feast, those important people all had excuses. Oh, I bought me a cow. I'm too busy with my business. I got a family to do, grow, and all this stuff. They had all these excuses. And so the king got very angry, and he ended up going out and getting the lowest and the least. And because they didn't come dressed in wedding garb, he actually gave them clothes to wear as they came in. However, as he was walking around, he found one person who was not properly clothed. Again, a very sober warning at the end. Here it is. Friend, he asked, how is it that you are here without wedding clothes? But the man had no reply. When the king said to his aides, then the king said to his aides, bind his hands and feet and throw him into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen. Again, incredibly sobering. But Jesus has no problem shifting the motif. We've seen him do this so many times. So in one story, we, the church, the followers of Jesus, we're the bride. In another story, we're the bridesmaids. In another story, we're the invited guests. So we get back to Revelation and it says this. It says, for the time has come for the wedding feast of the Lamb, and his bride has prepared herself, and she's prepared herself with these fine linens. This passage says that she's not just waiting. She's working. She's busy. She's busy preparing herself. His bride, look at verse 7 and 8 there. His bride has prepared herself. This is a time of preparation. This is a time of getting ready, and this might absolutely mess with your theology, but I don't think we can get away from this. Take a look at what it says. It says the finest linen represents the good deeds of God's holy people. You know, I think in church world these days, we are so far on the grace side. Oh, we're cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. We're forgiven by the blood of the Lamb. What Jesus did on the cross, we can almost do anything we want because we're forgiven. I think the pendulum has swung so far to the grace side that we forget that it needs to be followed up with action. In fact, what Jesus says is we will be clothed, and the clothing we're going to wear is our good deeds, are the good exploits, are the things we did with our one and only life. In other words, we are, right now, today, we are stitching our wedding dress together in heaven with the threads of our good deeds and our good exploits and how we treated other people. There's got to be action to this faith. And the way we prepare for his return is by our good deeds. So the groom, Jesus, has returned to his Father's house to prepare a room. And now he's gathered his entourage. The trumpets have announced him he's coming back, and he's coming back for his bride, and we enter into stage 2, which is the wedding. And now we have the wedding, and it's, the war is over, the threat is gone, all has been made ready. The king is coming for his bride, and it's party time. And after the wedding, it breaks into stage 3, which is the marriage supper of the Lamb, or the banquet. You see, in ancient Jewish tradition, it wasn't just an evening. This was a prolonged event. This could happen for easily a week or even more because the waiting was over, the living apart was over, and now they were absolutely together. So what was the point of this wedding drama? I think it was to remind us. It wasn't meant for a chart, it was meant for our heart. It was to remind us that every day we're in this season, right now, of waiting and preparation. This isn't the end. It's not going to end one day when I die. This is barely the beginning. We're only in the betrothal period right now in our relationship with God. You think you know Jesus so well. You haven't even gotten going. You're not even together yet. You're just in the betrothal period. We're 100% committed to each other, but we haven't even met together yet. And we're only at the very, very beginning. And one day he's coming back for us. So Jesus projects this vision on the walls of heaven, and I think it's a vision there to inspire us not to waste our waiting and to make sure that we are not cheating on our groom, that we are 100% committed to him and anticipating his return and looking forward to his return. But not only that, we're actually preparing ourselves. We're actually getting ourselves ready like a bride would with such anticipation, looking every day. I wonder if he's coming today. I can't wait for him to come. I can't wait for us to be together. It's a time for us as a church to work out our salvation with this waiting and with this preparation. But Jesus juxtaposes this picture with a completely different picture. Now he changes from a wedding to a war. It's Jesus' way of saying, I think, salvation is intimacy, it's tenderness, it's relationship, it's obedience, it's celebration, but salvation is also a battle. It's also a battle. We defeat evil in this. I think Jesus painted these incredibly poignant pictures to sear them onto our conscience, to brand them onto our souls, so we would walk around every day with this picture of a wedding and this picture of a war, and realize that our salvation isn't just a plaque we hang on the wall and we pick up someday when we're dead, but every single day I'm in a season of preparation. Every day I'm waiting, but I'm also in this point of war. You know, as we've been walking through the book of Revelation, it's like every time we study this book, it asks questions of us. And I think it's questions that are designed to lead us to the Father. One more time. Now, you know, we began with a question like this. Are we worshiping Jesus as the centrifuge of our universe? Are we joining the redeemed, the 24 elders? Are we getting off our own thrones and laying down our own crowns to worship Him as the centrifuge of my universe? A poignant question. Whose mark do we have on us today? Do we have the mark of the beast, the mark of the world in our thoughts and in our actions? Or are we covered with the mark of God's word in what we think and what we do? Whose mark, when people look at us, what mark do they see on our lives? Where are we heading? Are we heading towards the New Jerusalem or the old Babylon? Who are we in bed with? Are we in bed with this enticing, harlot of Babylon, the world? Are we in bed with the world? Are we in bed with God? Are we going to be scantily clad when we end up in heaven? Or are we going to be having sent ahead these white threads that are woven into this beautiful dress? And now we're asked another question. And the question is this: am I involved in the action of salvation on the battlefield? Or am I the equivalent of a defector? Wow. Are you involved in the battlefield? Are you actively, on a daily basis, understanding that you are a warrior and that you are called to the battle? You know, most people, when they think of this whole end times thing, and they think of war, they instantly go to Armageddon, right? And Armageddon is this powerful term that everybody knows about. I mean, it's just taken over, and everybody knows that this is like the big final battle between good and evil in this valley of Armageddon. In fact, when I was in Israel, we had a tour guide. He wasn't a Christian, he was a Jewish scholar, but he was telling us, he knew that we were all Christian pastors, and he was telling us as we stood in Megiddo, which is an old city, he said, this is where the war of Armageddon is going to take place. He knew he had a putty in his hands, and he was describing the war of Armageddon going to take place in this valley and how it was connected to Megiddo. I've since learned that might not be entirely true, because Armageddon actually literally means the mountain of Megiddo, and nobody knows of a mountain of Megiddo. Nobody's ever found a mountain of Megiddo. And this is the only reference in the entire Bible to Armageddon. There's one little reference in Revelation 16. However, it looks awesome on the maps and on the date setters and everything. It's amazing. It's once again, it's irresistible. There is one other place in Zechariah that talks about another version with another name, which really means the plain of Megiddo. But there's no such plain of Megiddo either. We're not sure where this is. But here's what we do know, that in that area, somewhere, generally speaking, some of the greatest battles between Israel and their enemies took place. Times when God rose up to show the victory. You could kind of point them out within a 50-mile radius. And so might it be that God was simply referring to this Armageddon as a reference, as a place that, you know what, not necessarily there's going to be this one great war with Russia and China and Israel and all this craziness at the end of the world. Maybe, but maybe it was simply a reference to the fact that, you know what, God is victorious in the battles of life. And to put it bluntly, I think we walk onto the fields of Armageddon every single day. I think you've been to Armageddon. I think you fight at Armageddon on a regular basis. You regularly come up against oppression and things that come against you in a powerful way. And in case you think I'm just sort of making that up, let me remind you what the rest of the Bible has to say about battles. James 4:7. So humble yourself before God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. God is saying, listen, you're a resistance fighter. That's who you are. You need to be battle ready. The devil's going to come against you. You need to be somebody who is resisting and pushing back on a daily basis. 1 Timothy 1:18. I'm giving you this command in keeping with the prophecies once made about you, so that when you recall them, you might fight the battle well. Are you battle ready? Are you fighting well? You need to be a soldier, but not only a soldier, not a defecting soldier. You need to be on the battlefield, and you need to be a good soldier. 2 Corinthians 10:4, the weapons of our warfare are not of flesh, but they have divine power to destroy strongholds. How many of us come up against strongholds on a constant basis, and we just sort of give in to them, and we forget that we've been equipped with divine power to destroy strongholds. However, there are times when the enemy seems too strong. It seems like the advances are coming against us, and we just need to hunker down. And Psalm 62:2 says that God is our bunker. He says this, He alone is my rock and my salvation. He's my fortress. He's my bunker where I will never be shaken. He will protect you. Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor so you'll be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle, you will still be standing firm. Do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called. After all, the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. This is what God says to you. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of the vast army that comes against you, for the battle is not yours, but God's. He'll do the fighting for you at Armageddon. What then shall we say of these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? What we need to realize is that our salvation is not something that Jesus did 2,000 years ago and one day we're going to experience. Your salvation is not something that you hang on the wall as a memory. For me, it was when I was 6 years old. My salvation is not something that happened when I was 6 years old and I don't look at it again and all it does is collect dust. Salvation isn't a plaque that we hang on the wall or a card you carry in your wallet. Salvation is something that God is doing right now, and He's inviting you into the action. He's inviting you into the action to do it with Him. And so He gives us these two powerful pictures. One is of a bride. Those of you that are married, do you remember that engagement time? Do you remember that? How oh my goodness, everything was just focused on that groom. Everything was focused on the wedding. You were just so full of anticipation. You were so full of excitement. You couldn't wait for the day that you were actually going to be able to come together. And so you were waiting, but you were also preparing. And I think our salvation is a matter of preparation. I think the question that comes to us is this a picture of your salvation? Is your salvation a plaque on the wall that's collecting dust, or is your salvation a relationship with Him? And are you prepared? Because I believe after our study so far, I believe He could come back any day. I don't think we're waiting for any more signs. I think Jesus could come back, leave the Father's house a second time, and come back for us any day. And if He did, if He came back tomorrow, if He came back this afternoon, would you be sitting there going, whoa, 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 could you hang off a couple of years? Because I'm really not in a place where I'm ready. Or are you sitting there going, you know what, I've prepared myself. I've been preparing myself, I've been anticipating, I've been looking for this moment, I've been waiting for this moment, I'm ready. I'm so ready to meet my groom. But it's also a battle. It's a war. It's a daily Armageddon. Your salvation is a daily Armageddon. The battle is for your mind. The battle is for your passion. The battle is for your longings, for your time. The battle is for your integrity. Every day you face a battle of integrity. The battle is for your sexual purity. The battle is for what you do with your money. The battle is for what your deepest longings are. The battle is for your testimony. Are you battle ready? Are you, in fact, on the fields of Armageddon, battling it out right now, using the armor that God has given you and the divine power that God has given you? Or are you letting Jesus do the heavy lifting and taking all the shots on the battlefield while you have defected? He says you need to be in the battle on a daily basis. Now, do I believe that the Revelation speaks of the end? Absolutely. Absolutely I do. Do I think the Revelation speaks of Jesus' second return and that He's coming back? I'm betting my life on it. Absolutely am. But I do not believe that the book of Revelation from our study is a chart that we're supposed to be drawing out and then leaving to some mysterious doomsday future. I think it was something meant for our hearts. And it was something meant to challenge us today. I think it wasn't just to say, hey, one day Christ is going to reign supreme over maybe 1,000 years. I think it was intended to ask the question, is Christ reigning supreme in my life today? Is Christ reigning supreme in your life today? So as you go through this next week, waiting, preparing, battling, let me remind you who it is that you are waiting for and who it is that you will be battling beside. Revelation 19:11. Then I saw heaven open, and a white horse was standing there. Its rider was named Faithful and True, for he judged fairly and wages a righteous war. On his robe, at his thigh, was written this title, King of all kings and Lord of all lords. Would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, thank you for the revelation. God, I think it really doesn't matter whether we come from the futurist camp, the preterist camp, the historic camp, or the idealist camp, whether we're amillennial, premillennial, postmillennial, whatever all that stuff is. Because we've missed the point if we don't see Jesus and fall in love with you, Jesus, more and more every time we see it. And we're just hearing these questions ringing out of heaven these days. And God, I pray that this next week, that the image of a wedding, the image of a war would go with us every day to activate our faith, to activate us towards passion, to activate us towards prayer, to activate us towards obedience, to activate us towards action, that we would work out our salvation with fear and trembling on a daily basis. God, I think there's some of us that simply need to take the plaque off the wall, and we need to simply begin to live out our salvation every moment of every day. That's what I believe the revelation is calling us to. Jesus, we thank you for it. We pray that you would energize our life for it, and we look forward to the day you're returning. In Jesus' name, and all the people said, Amen. God bless you. We got one more week of Revelation, but before we go, Warehouse and Fire Hall, we are so looking forward to meeting you in the park. We're all going to party together as a church. Our kids are leading us in a party. We got dunk tanks and bouncers and hot dogs and all this stuff over there. So we'll meet you there in just a few minutes. God bless you.